Welcome to the Quick Start Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and I'm joined today by Trey Goins-Phillips. We have a breaking news update in the horrific case surrounding Charlie Kirk's assassination. Trey, how you doing today?
Well, you know, it's a sad day, I think, in our country. It's been a sad week in our country, but there should be, I hope, some modicum of peace and maybe a step closer to closure, knowing that a suspect, and potentially the suspect, is now in custody after the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. We wanted to do this special news update because this happened after our morning podcast today, that the suspect Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, from Utah, has been arrested, and there's so many details that are still coming in on this. We'll cover some of them here, but the New York Post and other outlets are reporting that this particular individual had become increasingly political and felt that Charlie Kirk was, quote, full of hate. So Trey, what do we know about this individual so far?
Yeah, so from what I'm seeing, what I'm reading and listening to even on the CBN News YouTube channel, you can go there and you can watch the full FBI press briefing with the FBI Director Kash Patel and the Utah Governor Spencer Cox and others there who are part of this 33-hour-long manhunt for Tyler Robinson. But from what we've gathered so far, we know that he was from an area called St. George, about 3.5 hours away from UVU. So he traveled there with the intent of killing, it seems, Charlie Kirk. But what is fascinating to me is how the confession, or the alleged confession, unfolded, that he eventually made his way home. Tyler did. He confessed, according to reports, to his father, or he at least indicated to his father that he was the one who killed Charlie Kirk after his dad confronted him. And his dad is a former sheriff deputy too. So I think that is interesting. And then the fact that the father then brought in their youth minister, church youth minister, into a conversation, who the youth minister is an officer with the U.S. Marshal Service. And then the two of them, the father and the youth minister, ultimately led Tyler to turn himself in.
You know, we're gonna be hearing much more on this as the days go on here. Obviously, you know, more details, more information. But what you just described is a really bizarre series of events there. But, you know, this is why it's so important when the FBI goes out there with those images and videos. I think there was some frustration, or at least commentary, among some in the beginning. You know, what was taking so long to find the suspect? You had a press conference on Thursday night that didn't really give a lot of new information, but did give photos and video that seemed to be new. And what's so intriguing about that is that this particular father of Tyler reportedly actually saw those images and recognized his son. That's why they put those images out, in the hope that friends and loved ones will be able to find the person. I did want to also note that the Utah Governor, Spencer Cox, here in this case, he's been very vocal, speaking out on it. One of the key details here has to do with the ammunition, this idea that there was anti-fascist messaging that was inscribed on the ammunition. The governor, he did call this a political assassination, and he did speak to the fact that there was messaging on some of that ammo. What do we know about that?
Yeah, so from what they've gathered so far of the ammunition, which they found the gun, the rifle, it was in a wooded area right off the campus site, the main campus site, the building from which it appears Tyler Robinson fatally shot Charlie Kirk. The bullets, several of them had different messages on them. One had the lyrics apparently to an Italian anti-fascist song scrawled on them. Another one said, "Hey fascist, catch," written on it. And then another one had what appears to be an internet troll or an internet meme that written on it was, "If you read this, you are gay," and then had an expletive laced kind of laughter tagline there at the end. So yeah, it's very clear, as you said, Billy, that we don't know exactly what the specific motivation was here, other than it was certainly motivated by hatred. It was targeting him, targeting Charlie Kirk, believing he was a fascist of some kind. We don't know if it was any more specific than that, but it's very clear that this was, as Governor Cox said, this was a political assassination that had 100% to do with Charlie Kirk speaking freely, using his free speech rights.
Yeah. And I want to read a statement from Governor Cox here. He said, "This is certainly about the tragic death, assassination, political assassination of Charlie Kirk, but it is also much bigger than an attack on an individual. It is an attack on all of us. It is an attack on the American experiment." And to his point there, the thing about this that is so troubling, I mean, there's so many layers of it that are troubling, but that we are in a position, in a place in this country where people speaking out based on what they believe, sharing their perspective, that they are becoming targets for assassination or assassination attempts. And that is no way to run a republic. It's dangerous, it's horrific, and that's where we are. And so I thought those were really pertinent words.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're in a dark season, and I think not to sound too cliche, given the name of the organization that Charlie Kirk founded, but I think we are at a turning point in our country. This is a dark moment, and as Christians, our only prayer can be, God, how can you use this? How can you use this to reach more people with the gospel? And my hope and my prayer is that that's what happens. But in the immediate, our prayers have to be for justice to be served for Governor Cox, for the FBI, for the police, the authorities involved in all of this, for justice to be served, and of course, too, for Erica, Charlie Kirk's widowed wife, and their 2 young daughters. I mean, just prayers for them as they begin just a seriously dark season of grief, and also for Charlie's parents, too. I mean, you have to remember, he was only 31 years old. He was very young and still had an incredibly young family to care for that are now left alone because of this.
Yeah. And that's so important. Those prayer points, if you are somebody who prays, and we hope you are, because we're Christians and that's what we should be doing, we're called to it, getting a prayer list out, writing those things down, his wife, his children, people like our friend Lucas Miles, who, helps run TP USA Faith, all the staff there as they're, moving forward, his other family members. There are so many people affected by this. And I've heard from people affected by this who didn't know him. I've seen so many messages. I didn't know him, but I feel like I lost a family member. And I think this is something that is because of who he was and how, he permeated so many different facets of our culture. There's a lot of people who are hurting. And so we've got to make sure, even in our responses to people, there's a lot of people saying inappropriate and unfortunate things on social media, that we respond as Christians. And I'll give you the final word on that, Trey.
Well, I want to echo all of that, but I also want to share, as we're closing out, just a statement from Turning Point USA saying that they're grateful to hear about an arrest. They said, nothing is ever going to make this better, but I'm so glad that they got him. And I know that FBI Director Kash Patel and FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino and the entire FBI and their local partners literally did not sleep. They told me that. They told me they're not going to stop until they got him, and they were men of their words. And I thank them for that.
Well, you can stay tuned to CBN News for more updates on this important story as they unfold. That is all the time we have for today. If you want a Christian perspective to the news, make sure you're subscribing. You can also email us, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. And don't forget to subscribe to the CBN Quick Start email newsletter as well. We will see you again on Monday.